Hey there, today is a very special day. I am super excited and grateful to be here with Cindy Healy, who's newly the Senior Director of Employee Onboarding at Microsoft. Congratulations, Cindy, and thank you so much for coming back for part two.
Great. It's my pleasure to be here.
And this is such an important time to not only talking about building a personal brand, internal and possibly even external to your company, but onboarding and talent, all these things. It's such a hot topic, an important topic right now. And so I'm really excited about this conversation. Now, before we hop in and I start picking your brain and you share your wisdom that everyone can learn about building a personal brand, I thought I would ask about, how did you get to where you are? In other words, what piqued your interest was your, earlier in your career? And were there any hiccups or bumps along the way?
Oh man, so many bumps. But yeah, just growing up, and I'm sure a lot of women can relate, but growing up and really being like the little leader of the neighborhood, but at that time referred to as bossy, right? And so being the little bossy one that was trying to set the agenda for play dates and those kinds of things, and always being the one that would recruit a group of people to go after some goal or some, you know, whatever we were doing as kids, like but just being known as a leader, and then having that come out a little bit bossy, and then always setting goals as well, like whether it was I want to make the cheerleading team, or I want to get a great grade in this class. I remember in my typing class in junior high wanting to be the fastest typer in the typist in the class, and just always being very goal oriented. And then I would say the biggest hiccup was just living at a time and in a place. I grew up in a really small kind of little bedroom community within Southern California, and college just wasn't on anyone's radar. So even though I was a good student and had good grades and everything, I wasn't being guided in that direction. It was just very, very foreign to me. So I was taking college prep classes and things in high school, but nobody was helping me try to figure out how I might go to college. So I ended up in the 13th grade at a local community college, and then with by the grace of God, had somebody that I met at a summer job just steer me to computer science, and going to college and enrolling in a university and majoring in computer science, and that just changed everything. And I remember a teacher had told me at one point, like in junior high, eh, go to a 4-year school, live in the dorms, have the time of your life, but get a college degree. No matter what you get it in, it shows that you can do something really hard. It shows future employers that you can accomplish hard tasks. And for whatever reason, that resonated with me. I couldn't imagine who my future employer might be. My future employer didn't even exist yet, and as in terms of Microsoft, and so I just took that to heart. And so once I did get into college, oh gosh, it was so hard. I had barely touched a computer before, and learning how to program a computer was harder than learning a foreign language, right? It was just really, really complex. But I stuck with it, and so that is part of my personal brand. I think too is just this of having a real strong aptitude towards perseverance, and so I guess that's what I would start off with and share that.
And I think I'm just wondering if that's part of why you're so passionate about finding the right people and onboarding, because it seems like you had someone in your life who, was not a parent, was not a relative, and just really inspired you, and you just took off in a whole different amazing path. And so just to, shine a light on that and, encourage those who are listening, to be very proactive about, that young people that are crossing your path, because you might say something to them that inspires them to greatness and allows them to really crack open, what they're made of and the impact and contribution, that they're going to make. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's so important.
Yeah, they so I was working at just a little bit more on that story. I was working at an amusement park in Southern California, and one of my leads let me know that my change count was always accurate. I worked in an arcade and I gave away change all day, and at the end of the day, your bag had to balance. And she told me that my change count was always accurate, and I was like, well, how hard is that? And she said that you'd be surprised. And then she said, if you're good at math, you should go to university and be a computer science student. And I was like, what? And but that this idea of catching people being good at something, that's what helps them build their personal brand and understand what they are good at. Because a lot of times the things that are good at, or we don't even recognize that's special, or that's a big deal, because it's just like waking up for us. It's easy.
Yeah, you bring that up, and it's such an important point that to catch people being good at something. And so, even if they're already within your company, or even if one thing that, like, I remember growing up, whenever we used to go out to eat, my dad would actually do that for a waitress. He would say something like, wow, you don't even have to write down, what we're ordering. You have an incredible memory. Have you thought about other ways to use that?
Yeah.
And I mean, at the time, of course, I was like, I'm not related. It was embarrassing.
Exactly.
But I think it goes such a long way. And also, if, for talent, if you catch that, it helps them to be seen, to feel seen and heard. And
Oh,
who knows, maybe inspire them to go in a direction that they could end up being a manager, director, VP, when they wouldn't have if you didn't bring that up. So I think catching people doing something great is an incredibly important point. Thanks for bringing that up.
sure. And I think it can snowball into other things, or you can use one strength to help you overcome another area where you have gaps, right? It's getting in touch with what you're good at, what's important, and I love helping people see that. And people love to be seen. People love to be seen. So it's such a great way to connect with somebody.
Yes, 100%, 100%. So if you think back on your journey over the past couple handfuls of years, what advice would you give your younger self to make things either um, easier for yourself or maybe quicker?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things, especially uh, in being a software developer, being in environments where I was really typically one of the only females, and so a little bit of fish out of water. That for me it was just like, oh, I'm just happy they let me be here. I'm lucky they let me be here. And so I feel like I lived that mindset for too long. It's like, I'm lucky they even let me in the room, let alone sit at the table. And so as I got more and more experience under my belt and more confidence, then I started realizing that it's like, oh, not only do I deserve a seat at the table, but I deserve a voice at the table, and to start expressing that. And so if I had to go back and tell my younger self anything, it would be that about, don't be afraid to contribute, uh, and don't be afraid to be ambitious. To be ambitious. You're not lucky. You earned your way there, and now earn your way someplace else, right? And I think a lot of times too, I would bounce around a little bit, especially earlier in my career. I would bounce around, gaining experience and moving to what was available. It wasn't so much by my design. So I would also say, hey, what do I really want to do? And some of the times when I did that is when I had the absolute best moments of my career. Is like, um, I was uh, I was a contract programmer for a few years, and I was bouncing around, and the environments weren't great at the places I was working at. They were okay, but a lot of times it was very depressing in the aerospace world, and just a lot of constraints, and talk about being a fish out of water. And so I started asking around, saying, "Hey, if you do this type of work, where's the best place to work?" and I heard the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is the best place to work. And so I set my sights on getting a job at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and I did. And so that is, and then I just ended up having wonderful years there. And so that's the type of thing. It's like, hey, let me think about what I really want to do next, or what I want to do with my career, and then start figuring out a way to make that happen.
I think that's amazing advice. So I'm hearing you say, like, dream big and go for it.
Absolutely.
And take some control around where your passion meets your area of expertise. And even if that's not clear, do what you did. Ask around. Hey, I like this. I think I'm pretty good at this. What do you think? And get some ideas and start talking to people.
Absolutely.
And I might add, talk to people maybe even that you think wouldn't talk to you. So in other words, maybe to add to that, get comfortable with making big asks, because I think a lot of times people, especially people in high places, might be more willing to help out than you might think.
I agree. And I still struggle with that. I still get knock-kneed, around really senior executives. And I just have to talk myself through it, that they were in my shoes one time. They don't want to be treated that way necessarily. It's like, don't randomize them or treat them with any kind of disrespect. But I think a lot of times our inner dialogue may make that scarier than it needs to be.
Yeah, 100%. And just for anyone's listening that's thinking of, oh, I need to do that more, I want to do that, I thought that I would add to make sure that you're really prepared for those conversations. And that preparation starts with clarity. So, like, kind of what I call future casting the conversation. So if you think of how do I want the conversation to turn out? What did I get answers to? How am I move forward because of it? And maybe even ask yourself, what can I add that might be helpful to that person? Which might sound a little crazy, but as a more junior person, you have a different perspective and, maybe a different area of expertise, or really some value to learn. That way you can make the most of the time that you do have.
Absolutely.
Such an important point. So let's ease into our topic about how to build a personal brand. We were talking a little bit before we went live on why this is so darn important, and maybe how, not to throw us women under the bus at the same time, but maybe how we can start to amplify our voice and our personal brand, really where our passion meets our area of expertise a little bit more to increase our visibility. So can you give us, where to start? And it could be if someone's entry level, but it's applicable, in my opinion, all the way up to if you're a senior executive and you want to build a personal brand as far as a board member. So I think this is really applicable in a very wide range. And so can you share kind of where do you think is the best place to start if you want to build a personal brand?
Yeah, and it's interesting when you talk about it at different stages of your life or different stages of your career. But so let's try to problem solve this with things that would be applicable at any time. I think when you're trying to build your own personal brand, a great thing is to sit down and do an inventory. It's like, what types of things do I do where I completely lose track of time? Or if somebody asks me for help with something, it inevitably goes to this kind of a thing. Like, for example, if people come to me with any kind of situation, I will sit there and come up with all kinds of solutions. So I love problem solving, and then that means that I'm also creative, and I love to brainstorm, right? And so being able to lock in on that is an example of understanding what you're bringing to the table. Why do people come to you for help? So doing that type of self inventory, I think, is super important. And then I like to, think of who is my personal board of directors. What mentors do I have? What friends or colleagues do I have? Maybe people who have worked with me, for me, in the past, who've hired me. It's like, what would they rehire me for, or what would they endorse me for? And to understand, like, what am I really bringing to the table? And it gets easier once you have more job experience. For me, speaking of career, it has gotten easier as I have more and more job experience, and I can look back through my resume and see the patterns. Oh, this was a really innovative solution to a tough problem. Oh, this demonstrated my customer centricity. Oh, this is, where I use data to prove the business case of why we needed to go this way, right? And so it starts to line up and present a pattern pretty quickly. Um, I'll just a quick story about because you have to be careful because sometimes you're just being you and you don't understand like what is going on here. What is Sometimes it's like I'm just being me and this isn't working, or I'm just being me and this seems to be working incredibly well. And making sure that you're asking for feedback to adjust the sales both ways, right? And I'll remember a couple of years ago, I got a special recognition, and my boss called me on the phone, uh, and you think, oh, what's going on? Am I in trouble? And, and or at least that's what I thought. And because he rarely called me on the cell phone. And so calling me, and he's like, do you have a minute to talk? And I was like, yes. And so it was a special recognition and award that he was giving to me. And I was so honored and so thankful. And at the same time, a little confused. And I was like, I get it that this is such a big deal and you're telling me that you really like what I'm doing, but could you give me some specifics so that I keep doing them? Because they might be on my fix it list, right? And so then he was able to rattle off a few things, about my commitment to diversity and inclusion, my, just going back to just innovating through the way I solve problems, and being able to iterate and make something better over time, but still being able to land things quickly and then iterate and learn and evolve over time was really valuable to the organization. And so they were recognizing me. And so but I did need a little dose of like, hey, what's going on here? Why is this so, help me see myself through another lens. And so that was really helpful.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really important point about specificity. Like, can you tell me exactly what? Because it's nice to hear, but then you can also lean into it even more and improve, even if you're already being recognized or you're already doing a great job. And keeping in mind, too, that if no one had, I mean, for anyone listening, if no one has called you on your cell phone or, given you any of the accolades like Cindy talked about, then you can also ask and say, here's what I'm passionate about. Here's what I'm working hard on. Here's the progress. Can you let me know what about that I'm doing that you think is really great? And maybe what are my blind spots? And
Absolutely.
so I
And
just
you
think,
have to be ready to hear about the blind
yeah,
spots, right? And so preparing yourself to get constructive feedback, and then thinking about, hey, how do I use my strengths to overcome this? Or how do I just how do I take it in and understand that people are trying to help you when they give you feedback. I always say feedback is a gift. You hear that all the time, and it's such a cliche, but it really is. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And when people are indifferent to you, they will not give you constructive feedback. They will ignore you. And so when somebody cares enough to tell you, you got to do something with that.
yeah, definitely. And I think there's a good quote that I would write down, definitely for sure. That was a great one. Um, And so, taking that further, we were talking also a little bit before, excuse me, before we went live on why it's important to have a personal brand and be vocal about it, and how to not just strive for a seat at the table, but to strive for a voice at the table. And so, can you share a little bit how, emerging leaders or leaders too, for that matter, can help build a personal brand and really be known for being passionate, for caring, and for being good at something?
Yeah. I I think one way to do that is to really come up with a personal philosophy. So we've done at Microsoft, we've been fortunate enough to study with Dr. Michael Gervais. He has a great podcast, and he's just got a curriculum that includes creating your personal philosophy. And so what gets you out of bed? What are you contributing to the world? What work world and personal life? It's like, what are you contributing to the world? And when you can get honed in on that, and within that are some of your values. And so understanding your values. And so um, for me, it's like I want to be of service to others to help them see the goodness in themselves so that they can achieve their dreams, right? That's a big part of my personal philosophy. And so what do I need to do with myself to get myself in those situations to help? Well, one of them was becoming a certified professional coach so that I have some skills behind helping people achieve their dreams. But another one is that I need to make sure that I'm in positions of influence so that I can be the inspirational type of leader that I want to be, or and build organizations, build teams, and then have an influence and impact on the work of others, like we do in the onboarding space. Is really setting people up for success. So I think understanding what type of impact you want to have on your work world, your career, and on other people is super helpful and necessitates building a brand or having a unique set of skills that you want to bring to that, right? And one of the ways that having a unique or understanding my unique brand has really helped me is in going after my dream job, right? Going after the job that I have right now. A friend coached me on understanding, really putting into some bullet points. What are three things that you're bringing to the table that are unique to you, on top of the skills and the experiences, but are they unique to you that they get when they say yes to you? And so one of mine was about being a creative and innovative problem solver. One of mine was being a data driven and action oriented decision maker. It's like I will go and figure it out and iterate, like I said. And then another one was about being a caring and passionate people leader with, that I've done a lot of work for diversity, done a lot of work for STEM education. And so really being able to talk about those things. So having those three bullet points in mind, taking control of the interview when they say, tell me about yourself. It's like, well, here you go, bam, bam, bam. And then throughout the course of the interview, when people are saying, like, it's like, tell me about a challenging time where you had to deal with a project that wasn't somebody's top priority. And it's like, well, let me tell you about how I used my, innovative and creative problem solving to tackle that situation. And so you can just keep bringing it back to your brand. And so both in interviews and in everyday life, that it's like, as you go, if you pay attention, people will ask for, hey, how might you help me? And it's like, so I tell people all the time, it's like, hey, if you're ever having a brainstorming session, invite me, right? That you'll be glad I was there. I'm super creative. And so you get a chance to tell people uh, how they can use and leverage you, and that just keeps building your brand. And so I heard one time from somebody too that their goal was to be seen as strategic, so they just kept using the word strategy, and every time they spoke at a meeting, or when they were meeting with their boss, and the next thing you know, that person was being branded as strategic. And so that's a little trick, I think, that actually is useful, and I've used that in terms of uh, not trying to brainwash anybody, but really trying to spread my own message about how I think work is so much more exciting when we can be innovative and creative. And with that means that we also have to empower people to be innovative and creative. And so that's one of the things that I try to do every day.
Yeah, that is so important, like 100%. And so it seems like what you're saying is then to understand and get really clear on your unique area of genius. In other words, think of 3 bullet points and then really vocalize them and be proactive about it. hey, just so you know, I'm passionate and I love brainstorming. So you want me in the room. I mean, and so it's really leaning into those things with confidence, but it sounds like it really starts with clarity. And Cindy, this has been so helpful, and I'm so grateful for this conversation. You're amazing at what you do. Microsoft is really lucky to have you, as is your team. And I'm incredibly grateful for the time that we've spent together, and I look forward to following your journey.
Well, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and I hope to hear from some of your viewers.
Yes, be sure to drop some comments, whether you're watching this live or recorded, and tag Cindy and myself, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Great.
Talk to you soon.